Welcome to EpiSTEM podcast. This EpiSTEM podcast is brought to you from the National Centre of STEM Education at the School of Education in the University of Limerick. I'm your host, Geraldine Simi, and I'm the Professor of STEM Education here at the Centre and the Director of EpiSTEM. And my co-host,
Michelle Starr, and I am the Research Liaison Officer in EpiSTEM.
Welcome back, everybody, and our very special guest today is Liam Maquet, and Liam is here with us as an Assistant Professor in Technology Education in the School of Education here in UL, and he's also an EpiSTEM affiliate. Liam, you're very welcome to be with us today.
Welcome, Liam.
Thanks very much for having me. Delighted to be here.
Yeah, lovely. Yeah. Can you, for just our habit with everyone is to try and see, can we, get in at some kind of personal gossip? So where are you from? Where do you originate? What's the story? Before we even talk about UL and the research and all the wonderful work you're doing here.
Yeah, so I suppose the accent's a dead giveaway. Yeah. I'll try my best to be clear today. But I come from a coastal town called Ardara in County Donegal. So I would step out the front door and I'm looking at the sea.
Wow.
At home. So a big difference from Limerick.
Yeah.
So I grew up in quite a rural area, and fishing. Now, before my time, fishing and hand weaving would have been the two the main sources of income for people other than farming. And it kind of, I suppose, that still very much lingers there, and that presence is still there with fewer and fewer, but still present kind of hand weavers and fishers still in the community. So early on, I suppose I would have been exposed to a local hand weaver, that master hand weaver, John Hina, and kind of take me under his wing at the age of 13 or 14, where I started doing bits of hand weaving with him, making tweed blankets, scarves, the likes. And that for me, I suppose, just to kind of tie it back, that for me was a big driving force for technology education at second level when I was that age and kind of understand how things work and so on. So in my early years with John, I would have just woven and worked with him and helped out. And then I got, I suppose, a bit more autonomous in it, doing it myself. And after a few years, I built my own loom. And that
as one does,
as
a young teenager.
Yeah. I think the rest of my year group going out and nights out were looking at me with a tilted head. But I suppose that process, there was a lot of kind of reverse engineering. The last looms to be made were several hundred years old, and they were reused for years and years. One of the looms I have at home has burn marks on the side of it for when the old weavers used to hang up the tilly lamps. And I kind of burned into the timber and stuff like that. So before they even had electricity. So you're talking about building something, you have to look at all these old parts and figure out, right, how do these actually work together, reverse engineered so that you can build your own based on that. So that for me, I suppose, that tied into engineering in school a lot. And I went into my teacher in school asking him questions. I was like, look, I have this mechanism and I can't figure it out. Have you anything to help me? And he was very good that way. But it was quite a unique upbringing when you think of it that way. Anybody I mentioned it.
Well, it sparked the love and the interest. It did.
That's it, definitely.
And the passion and everything.
Yeah, and I still I wouldn't be home as often anymore in Donegal, but when I do, I still have a loom there. I still do a bit of weaving. I actually have it on hire at the moment, the Donegal ETB, who are training weavers now as part of a kind of a revival program.
Keep the trade, I suppose.
Exactly.
That's
fabulous. Yeah. And then that school you went to there was a secondary school then in Donegal. Was it in Glenties or where did you go?
Yes, so I would have went to school in Glenties in St. Columba's Comprehensive School.
Yeah, lovely. So all of that combined between the family, the loom, the whole works, it all combined, and you ended up doing your degree here then, an undergrad teacher education degree in engineering and technology and graphics, was it?
Yes, that's exactly, yeah. So I was very lucky that my secondary school and my principal and everybody very much valued those practical subjects, and because I had the interest and I had the drive to do them, for my leaving cert, I ended up doing DCG, engineering and construction, which was quite uncommon to get all three. Now, I didn't have the technology because the school didn't offer it, but if it did, they would have done it as well, kind of thing.
Oh, so they were two separate subjects. So you had technology and then engineering.
Yeah, so there's technology up to senior cycle, there's engineering to senior cycle. Wood technology turns into construction studies, and under junior cycle graphic turns into DCG, or design and communication graphics. So I'd done 3 out of the 4 technology subjects.
Yeah. You were in your right place because you were just doing something that you'd passion about.
Yeah, and I remember getting my Leaving Cert results and people were kind of, commending me on doing quite well. And I said to them quite clearly, I was like, I got A1s in the 3 technology subjects and that got me the 300 points straight away. But like, I didn't do that great in the rest of them, but I could do what I really loved at the same time and get rewarded
and you were doing
for that.
something you loved.
So I got, I was very lucky to get rewarded for the likes of that. Like.
Yeah, brilliant. Yeah. And I can see like why UL hasn't been able to let you go. So that after being a student, you came in teaching assistant and then university teacher. And more recently, you've been promoted and work now as an assistant professor.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you're doing teaching and you're doing your PhD. Are you nearly finished the PhD or where are you with it?
Nearly finished. Trying to keep the head down. It's just, I'm sure you know yourself between the teaching and the semesters, it can take away from it a bit, but keeping the head down and hopefully get finished fairly soon.
Because you're a director of one of the courses as well, aren't you?
Yes, course director for the engineering, graphics and technology.
Yeah, so that's busy. But you'll have the summer.
Yeah, that's it. Like,
just close the door, go up to Donegal.
Yeah.
And just do it.
That's it. Look, and it's rewarding too to see myself getting the course directorship, only having gone through it, not that long ago altogether. So it's kind of
it is. It's great for the young people to have you there with them as well. What's the title, or roughly what's the title and subject of the PhD?
It's the development of spatial ability in secondary level STEM education. So,
okay. It's all about spatial ability, so spatial thinking, spatial, all that intelligences around that.
How did you, just as a matter of interest now, before you start going into it, how did you come to that topic?
Yeah, so I suppose in my undergraduate, like we would have been lectured by Dr. Dermot Lane here, and Dermot would have always promoted spatial skills and spatial ability and talked about that within his lectures, and it always grasped me to be like, right, there's something we can actually train. It's found to be malleable or trainable, and I always kind of found it very interesting to link that back to the subject area and how could we use that to improve subject-specific components. And then I was lucky enough when I was graduated, so I went straight into the teaching assistant position, and at the same time there was a PhD project offered. So I'm doing my PhD with TUS in Athlone, and my 2 primary supervisors are actual graduates from here as well, so Dr. Jeff Buckley and Dr. Ronan Dunbar, and they had kind of offered a project. Now, the project isn't exactly what it is now. Do you know, it was offered as a loose kind of
as most PhDs are, because you have to narrow it down.
The word spatial was there and it caught my eye straight away. So they kind of had, obviously narrowed it down that they wanted to look at spatial, and then it was up to me to narrow it down even further. But so I was very lucky to get that opportunity, and I got a fee waiver for that and such as well. So at least that took the pressure off that way. But I remember talking to lecturers in second year of my undergraduate about doing a PhD. The interest was there very early on, and spatial was always at the forefront of my mind, just from being engaged with it through college and kind of finding that very intriguing.
Interesting,
and I mean, if we maybe start with your teaching, I know how passionate you are about that, because you've done wonderful resources for us on EpiSTEM that we're just about to put out on our STEM Academy. We have loads and hundreds of free resources for teachers to download, and we've now started a lovely engineering section on that. And we're going to in the next few days have a lovely set of teaching resources. So you're passionate about the teaching. Talk to me about that passion of teaching here, and where do you come from with regard to teaching? Because it's highly contested now as to how we should teach, whether it should be facilitating or, lecturing, or what should we be doing. I mean, it's a complex area, but just wondering, if I toss the ball in there, where are you coming from in it?
That's it. Looking at it, I suppose, I don't think I have the person with the answer, but my view would be a mix of everything. Like, there's a time and a place for, that lecture style, although maybe not as much, but there's a time and a place for active learning, and it might be appropriate in certain areas as well. But so it would be kind of achieving that balance. But a big part of my kind of philosophy is the active side of things, like getting students to figure out the information on their own as opposed to us giving it to them. So when you're mentioning that resource, like we took the topic of polymers, which is a senior cycle engineering topic, which is very dense traditionally in terms of theory, looking at atoms and molecules and the bonds, and the traditional diagrams used for polymers are quite hard to understand if you don't have strong visualization skills. So taking the likes of that and then building activities that allow the students to kind of figure that out by doing something that doesn't seem related, but then you can draw analogies, draw kind of things like that. So for me, I suppose that active side and getting the students to draw the information is a big part of it. But then I suppose there's a fine line too. Then that conceptual development would be very important, especially with our undergraduate student teachers here. When you're understanding complex topics, it's okay to be fit to, interpret it through this active learning, but they need to have that deep grasp of it. So there's kind of a fine line, and it's hard to balance at times, in fairness, but it is, I suppose.
I think they come hand in hand, don't they?
They do.
Because you have a concept with the hands-on. It gives you the context of within that. So it's kind of they work in together.
That's it. I don't think they'd ever work mutually exclusive that well.
Exactly.
Like even if I look back at experiences like on placement and so on, and this is I'll preface by saying it's to no fault of anybody. I've had younger cooperating teachers, I've had older cooperating teachers, and there's one that kind of stands out in my mind because he trained, the older cooperating teacher trained at a time where they had 1 hour of education per week, and the rest of it was all in the workshop and all in the drawing labs. So the focus on education and the focus on those pedagogical methods and so on wasn't really there. It was like you go in, and it was more about how do you keep authority in the classroom and so on. He told me that himself, and he, I suppose, looked back on that with a small bit of regret, because I remember him saying that to me when I was in placement. He said, "You have so much more of a step forward than they did when they started, because they were experts in their subject area. They really loved the drawing, they really loved manufacturing, but they didn't fully understand how people learn. And it was very much just, I'll do it and you imitate it," kind of thing. And then, and that does work to an extent, but I suppose having that deeper understanding of the pedagogical side of things is a massive benefit.
Yeah, and of course there's so many theories about how the pedagogy of learning. I mean, it's hilarious. The zone of proximal development is you hang people out over a cliff and then see how they get on.
That's it.
Hang them upside down, whether the teacher speaks or doesn't. I mean, it's just, you could do a bit of a parody really on it. There's so many theories. A friend of ours, Sheila McQueen, has written a book kind of from MIT about that embodied nature of teaching and learning that has never really been brought to the fore at all, because the guys that got their credit really thought of us as very much rational, so they weren't doing any of that hand-heart head piece at all.
Yes.
Yeah, so what you do definitely eliminates the whole facilitator anyway, which is because, as you're saying, is as well, that embodied teaching. It can change depending on the of the students in front of you. The
context,
where they're
the culture,
coming from.
the lot.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And it's something, it kind of strikes me every year when we have students going out in school placement, that it can be very easy to be like, this student is maybe not pulling their weight and so on, but just take a step back and say, look, they have 20,000 different educational theories, maybe telling them different things, and to be fit to pick one and say, explain that to your tutor or to embed that into a lesson, that's quite complex. So it does take, it takes the duration of the 4 years in your undergrad to get a grasp of that.
And your whole life.
Yeah.
That's it.
And you have to learn to chill as well, and just give some joy in the classroom about learning as well. Often the times, if your head is full of all the methods and techniques, you actually can maybe miss seeing the student in front of you. And the joy of learning and bringing that to them as well. And there is less talk about that when you're bringing out the bags of recipes, isn't it? It is. It's hard.
Yeah.
It's messy, and it's hard to get that right. You have to be deeply sensitive to the young people and the classroom situation and everything. Yeah.
And I find the pressures of an undergraduate degree or the school placement can kind of take away from that a bit. Like I would say to anybody that I got a 1-1 in my undergraduate, but I wasn't a great teacher at the end of it, and it took me that first 2 years of being a teaching assistant here to really hone a bit more, and I'm still learning every day. Like I'm still not an excellent.
We all
are.
Teacher.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm 40 years later, and I'm still learning.
I think there's sometimes can be a misconception that you come out of this as a polished teacher, whereas it's very much not the case.
Exactly, and it's never done and dusted. Never. And the main thing, the critical thing is, and we always talk about it, and it's having that reflexivity. You come out, after your class, and you might say, Jenny, that did go well, or that didn't go well, and you're thinking, and that's having that, to understand what was going on and what. Exactly.
Yeah, you do a lot on the Kolb's experiential learning and all that cycle, and you're very good on reflective practice, and having the theory and all that, but the reflective practice, and it's becoming a learner. And I think Maxine Green said it beautifully when she said the best kind of teacher is the person who's actually trying to be a learner themselves.
Yes.
And then at least you can throw yourself into the mix then with the young people, and then you're all trying to learn the thing yourself, as opposed to I'm coming in here as the authority on it all. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And I'm sure you would have seen it yourself over the years. there's a big jump in second year placement students to fourth year placement students in that perspective, where they go in and they think, I need to know everything here and I need to have the answers. Whereas I always say to them, like, if you don't know something, ask the student to look it up. Get them to explain to their peers.
Yes,
you
exactly.
can fact check it, obviously.
Yes.
But if that makes you learn it and kind of concrete it within your mind, so be it. That's a good way to go about things as well. Like,
it's actually is good. I kind of I like the metaphor of the old. I mean, I'm old now saying this, but like Columba, he looked like he had an old raincoat on him, and he looked like he didn't know anything, and he kept went round asking questions. Yeah. And actually, he really was on top of his game in terms of trying to find the killer in in the story. But actually, that kind of an approach at teaching, I know nothing here. Tell me something. That actually works as well very nicely. It draws out from the students.
Yeah, and I think like the new junior cycle with the classroom-based assessments, and like I know they got kind of mixed reviews, and there's a lot of kind of friction in embedding them first of all, but they have a massive opportunity for the likes of that, because traditionally when you went in and there was this view that the engineering teacher was the expert in engineering and they taught you all this information, now you're going in and there's a research project in second year where they have to find engineering principles in everyday life. So the engineering teacher can't naturally be an expert in, automatic milking systems and like automatic doors and shops, all this. The students pick that subject themselves, and whether it's something from home or something they're interested in. Like I have students and we do kind of a mock one here with third years, and they're looking at the likes of that automatic milking system. They're looking at stadiums and how stadiums are built and how the grass, the pitch covers work, automatic pitch covers, how the detection systems for boats work, how they can, the sonar works. And you can't possibly be an expert in that, but I think that approach to embedding that kind of an assessment is helping teachers a bit to realise that, because you can't possibly cover it all. But it's giving the students
like in
that
terms
autonomy.
of like the upskilling of teacher knowledge, there is a place as well for that, because I always think, well, if you're teaching physics, you kind of show that there is that interrelationship between mass and energy, but you're not actually asking the kids to sit down and do like Einstein. Eventually they get told E equals MC squared. Yeah. They don't actually have to work that equation out. Yeah. So that there is some knowledge that has to be given and respected in the canon, but at the meantime there's loads to play with.
Exactly.
Yeah, loads of playtime. Talking about playtime, let's get to the playtime of the PhD.
Yeah.
So what have you discovered? What are you finding? What are you interested in with the spatial thinking and reasoning?
Yeah, so I suppose to give a brief kind of overview that the basis of my research is that it's well established so far that spatial ability is, first of all, highly linked to STEM performance. So there was this massive study called Project Talent, where they had a couple of 100,000 students in America tracked over a couple of decades in their life. And those who scored higher on spatial ability measures in secondary school were more likely to go on to advanced degrees within STEM, so masters and PhDs in STEM areas. So that's one thing. And then the other thing is that longitudinal evidence and kind of meta-analyses have found that spatial ability is malleable, it is trainable. It's not something that's just naturally developed. We can target that and we can develop that. So I suppose for me, it's kind of taking the two together and say, right, if we know that this is linked to STEM attainment and STEM ability, and we know it's also targetable and trainable, could we target it in the Irish education system to promote STEM uptake? Mm-hmm. And it's not, I suppose, one kind of thing or question people would ask is like, what if people don't want to do STEM? It's not about pushing everybody into STEM, but it is about lowering the barriers. Yeah. That, if people maybe naturally didn't develop those spatial skills or whatever other skills, and they see that as a barrier to their own entry to STEM, that we're hopefully removing that and causing a bit of kind of equity there. So like traditionally, females have always scored lower in spatial measures, with a caveat. So the caveat being, one of the spatial measures I would use and a lot of researchers use is the PSVTR. So it's the Purdue Spatial Visualization Test of Rotations. It's a 20-minute time test with 30 items. But some research has found when they removed that time limit that there was no gender gap. Mm-hmm. So then the question starts to kind of crop up about, is that more of a confidence issue that people are second guessing questions, that they're not maybe answering it as confidently as maybe the male learners are just kind of going through it and they're taking their first guesses and going
so
with it.
So it could be a self-efficacy thing from the point of view of the men in terms of, it could be.
So there's no one size fits all, I suppose.
No. But it's worth exploring. Yeah.
It does indeed. And then the other side of it is the lower SES students as well, and that's kind of historically found that those in the lower SES schools and lower
kind
SES
of social class,
have scored lower on these spatial measures. So my research has kind of, I suppose, looked at the start. When I started the PhD, was very much kind of confirmatory and saying, right, is this still a thing within Ireland? Because a lot of it is in America, a lot of it's third level. So we're saying, right, in an Irish secondary level context, is this still evident? And we have seen the same trend. So females performing lower, and SAS students, or lower SAS students, I should say, performing lower in those measures. Then we took an intervention. So one of my supervisors, Professor Cheryl Sorby, has a developed spatial thinking workbook and online resources and kind of physical worksheets and so on. But it was developed again for third level. So she's an engineer and educator.
And she's in America.
Level.
She's
in Ohio.
In Ohio, yeah.
Yeah. So it was targeted towards third level engineering students, and it worked very well over many, many years. And the question then for me was, right, can we take something like that now and embed it in second level, or is there changes that need to be made? So my studies then, we had the year before last, we had around 1,500 TY students around Ireland. We had about 50 schools with 2 teachers in each school. So we had a control and an experimental group in each school. So the control group just done their TY math classes as normal. We embedded it within maths. And the experimental group, instead of doing their traditional maths classes, done this workbook, done the intervention and so on. What we found at the end of that was that gender gap was gone.
Yes.
So after getting that training, the gender gap was gone, and the females had actually jumped and outperformed the males as well, which is an important note. And the same with the lower SAS.
Yeah,
group.
I've seen that. I've seen that TY module that you've produced, very nicely done. It's a nice module for our students. Yeah. So I suppose you're going to be careful about making claims around it. I suppose in the PhD part of it is to look at it in the round.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And one of the questions for
me...
But
I think the main thing is that spatial intelligence can be taught as opposed to it being caught and it being there naturally in that it's just somebody's naturally talented in the area, that it can be taught. And I suppose it is complex in terms of people's backgrounds, and I suppose the toys they were given and the way society views
it's all about
gender,
opportunities, isn't it?
Maybe the way society expects girls to live and boys, and particularly young children. I see with my grandchildren. I mean, the temptation is to just give them boy-like and girl-like toys, and
massively. And I think, like you're saying nowadays, I think it's starting to get a bit less. But like very much, previously it was very much Lego might be a boy's toy. And if it was a girl's toy, it was pink Lego. This kind of way, or that boys played a lot of kind of blocks and building, making farmhouses and this kind of stuff. And girls played with dolls.
They were given tractors, and the girls were given the dolls.
They were given an Xbox. And they played video games, and the girls played with the dollhouse or whatever it might be. And there is theories there's kind of limited evidence because it's so hard to actually measure that. But there is theories that that natural development and engagement with the likes of Minecraft as a video game, or with Lego, and so is kind of developing those spatial skills early on, and the females didn't have that opportunity. So that is one of the kind of theories, but like you're saying, it's so hard to pick that out.
I think to have it contested and open-ended, it's still worth it. It's still worth the investigation. I think that's it, but to keep it, to be careful of the claims.
Yeah, maybe. Especially because, as we all know, I mean, I keep saying, and I always say to my students, that gender is a social construct. So we're born male, female, but once we're born, we're kind of boxed into whatever the culture, and especially Ireland and Western countries in particular, because we come from the capitalism, way of doing things. And patriarchy was kind of which came first, the chicken or the egg, but it was patriarchy would have been, why it is very much embedded there. So there would be all those gender roles. So we have to think of the way toys and then nature versus nurture, isn't it?
Exactly.
Rather than saying that, boys, or, is spatial ability, are you born with it, or is it something you actually is nurtured? It develops as we grow up, it's because of... And then with the lower SES families, it could be opportunities as well. So it's very muddy.
Yeah,
I think it's worth digging at it. I think it is worth digging at it, but I think it's worth living in the contradictions of it. And the bit that I would be more scared of is somebody coming up to some kind of a gender neutral approach, because it is actually it's very complex. So the danger of a gender neutral is say, well, now we'll disregard gender and we'll all be happy.
It's just
we'll all be happy ever after. Yeah. It ain't going to work like that either.
No, that's it. And I suppose for me, my view on the purpose of the intervention, the purpose of getting this out there, it's not to disregard what people have gone through and to, that can be its own thing separate. Okay. But for us to look right going forward now that everybody knows a clean slate, everybody knows the same opportunity. Exactly. That we can bring those people up who didn't have the experiences, didn't have the opportunities. And that everybody's at the same starting point.
And it's fantastic that is that awareness, that you're doing it and implementing it within the the curriculum.
Yeah, so I suppose like when you're talking about the curriculum, part of my next steps I would like to kind of look at is we know that spatial ability as a broad concept is related to STEM ability as a broad concept, but both are very abstract. Yeah. Like spatial ability is quite empirically, what's the word I'm looking for? Kind of classified or identified by the tests used.
It is,
so we can talk about what spatial ability is, but at the end of the day, the only measure we have of that is a psychometric test.
Yeah.
And it doesn't capture everything. There's a lot of issues with psychometric testing, and we could go on all day with that alone, I'm sure.
Even the way that it's framing and the algorithms and everything. We could really go on. We could have a great podcast on it.
Exactly. And if we go back to what I said earlier, like we could even question that PSVTR, was that gendered from the start? Was that, swayed towards male abilities and so on? So not to get too into that, but what I want to look at is now, can we take something that's quite abstract like disability, and we might take it from multiple different psychometric tests to get a more holistic view, and then map it to subject-specific competencies in the Irish context. So things we do in engineering, things we do in technology or construction studies or design communication graphics. And like from initial looking at the curriculums alone and the new junior cycle curriculums, there's a big emphasis on design and design thinking through all of those subjects.
Yes.
So even as that is a commonality, I suppose I'm starting to look at, right, what exactly are the components within that design thinking?
Yes.
And can we now start to map that ability, which is concrete within the classroom, and we can see it through particular artifacts or outputs, and map that to spatial ability.
Very interesting.
That's really interesting.
Very interesting.
Yeah.
I mean, my own interest as being professor of STEM education is actually not only developing the STEM for the talent bank, that abstract thinkers, the world needs abstract thinkers and innovators and all of that, but that's only one aspect of STEM and all the STEM subjects, and I'm very interested in bringing in ethics and arts into the mix and having it a STEAM ed really, rather than only just narrowly driven, maybe too tight onto a STEM. And the reason I'm interested is, I suppose, now the world needs people who have a collective responsibility for society, the kind of world we want, take care of the environment, all those things. They matter as much as just the talent for the economy.
Yeah.
So economy, society, environment, the bigger picture. So I'm really interested in kind of widening and broadening it, and at the same time removing, as you say, those barriers.
Yeah, exactly. And that's very in line with one of the common views, and it'd be my view as well, of technology education, is that we're preparing people with the ability to make change.
Yeah.
Right. We're not making, they're making artifacts, they're making projects. That isn't the goal.
No.
By doing those activities, by going through design processes, by going through that, is that they can take challenges or problems within society and they can make a positive change.
That's it.
And that's my whole view of technology education, really.
Yeah. That's what excites me, is the idea that you'll be having a hand in helping the next generation to be ambitious and have audacity. And really say we need a new way of doing infrastructure. We need a new way of doing all of the transport, energy, everything.
Yeah.
We actually really need audacious young people that can actually think outside the box for sure.
And I'm sure, is your feedback now from the students that you've worked with in the study, I'd say it has been quite positive. Or, what is the feedback rather than...
Yeah, quite positive. They enjoy it. There's a funny comment, and it always sticks in my mind. We got feedback one of the years, and it was one of the first years, so it was, we didn't pare it back at all or anything. We just gave it as it was. But one of the comments always sticks with me is, "It's fun, but it hurts my brain." I always thought it'd be a good name for a paper.
It's lovely. Brilliant.
No, as the years went on, I suppose we kind of took the feedback and we've made it a bit more active, or a bit more, a bit less tense as it was for third level and so on. But the feedback is generally quite good. A lot of the teachers really enjoy teaching it. And a lot of the students kind of were like, "Geez, we don't want to go back to our maths class now that we're enjoying this content."
It's great.
Yeah, brilliant, Liam. Yeah. That's lovely. Well, I think it might be a nice place to bring the podcast to a close today.
And best of luck getting over that last. You're just there. You're almost there.
Absolutely.
You can see the finish line.
So we're so delighted, and thank you very much, Liam Maquet from Assistant Professor in the School of Education here in UL. It's been a pleasure talking to you.
Thank you very much. Pleasure talking to you as well.
Thank you. Bye-bye. Our musical performance today is by Aisling Kearns. Aisling is from Castlebar, County Mayo. She's a third-year student with us here in the BA in World Music in the Irish World Academy of Music and Dance here at the University of Limerick. So here she will be playing for us an Irish traditional piece of music called The Island of Woods, and it has been written by a very infamous and famous American fiddle player and composer called Liz Carroll. And Liz has over 200 tunes already published by 2010, and I'm sure many more published since. She hails from Chicago and is an outstanding composer. So Aisling will now play The Island of Woods.